Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Astros Baseball. On this episode, we're going to talk about the new 2024 PECOTA projections, kind of look at the past and see how well they do. I know my boy Wally's got a lot of stats coming up. And we're also going to talk about playing time in center field with the talk about DH from Espada and how that's going to affect stuff. And also, he mentioned about adding a pitcher and what's that going to do to the payroll. We also have a small story on Ken Emmanuel, Super Bowl, and that might be about it. But joining me today, Wally and Ryan. What's up, fellas?
Doing well. We're just waiting for the season. Some things are starting to move. The rest of us, I think we're all waiting to see what happens with these last set of free agents, and especially the pitchers. They've got to be looking at their agents saying, "Give me a job."
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've been a little under the weather, so if I sound a little stuffy today, I'm going to work through this and use the cough button here and mute myself in case any come up. But glad to be on with you guys. Sorry I missed the last couple. You guys knocked it out of the park, and let's get into it.
Well, I definitely use the cough button quite a bit. And sometimes you do a show by yourself and you still do it, but it's just like it's going to be quiet while you're doing it.
Yep.
So this is something I love talking about, guys. I love when they come out with the PECOTA projections. And let's dive into it. Let's start with the American League. We're going to focus on the American League actually for a while. But the AL East, they got the Yankees winning 94.2, the Blue Jays 88.1, Baltimore 86.7, Tampa Bay 86.5, and Boston 79.4. So they got almost every team in the AL East projected to win about 80 games. But for me, the biggest surprise is Baltimore. How do they have Baltimore falling down into third place with 86.7 games? What's your thoughts on the projections there in the AL East?
Well, one thing with Baltimore last year, their projections, if you do their Pythagorean projection, it was at 95. They ended up at 101. I'm not sure I agree with Baltimore falling off like this because their young players are going to get better. But it sure seems like PECOTA is saying, they overperformed what their projection should have been, so we're gonna hit them on the projection this year. 87 seems about 10 games low to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you have to give them a little bit of love for adding Corbin Burns. I mean, that's man, they already won 101 with the pitching staff, and didn't really experience any fall off. So adding Corbin Burns, I think, is a huge plus for those guys. Jackson Holiday is supposedly getting a shot at shortstop, and it'll be interesting to see if he's able to come up and do something at the major league level. I don't see Baltimore falling to third place in that division. I really don't. I see them giving the Yankees a run for their money, despite some of the moves that the Yankees made. Baltimore's not, they didn't slouch off to the point of third. Toronto hasn't really made very many moves either. So
Mm-mm,
I think the first
mm-mm.
three spots there in the American League East are really almost a toss up, to be honest with you. It'll be interesting to see how some of the young guys on Baltimore continue to perform. That's probably going to be the big key to what happens with those top three slots, in my opinion, is how many of those young guys continue to perform at the high level, and are they able to replicate some of the things that they did last year?
All right,
And
so
I
if you
think
look, oh,
one thing last year is that they didn't no one expected them really to play. And it's something about playing when you're not expected. You can play fast and loose. It's going to be really interesting to see how they react when they're expected to win. There's going to be
so
a lot more pressure on this year than last.
last season, the PECOTA projection for Baltimore was 74-88, and they won 101 games plus 27. They won 27 more games than projected. Tampa Bay. So the Yankees were projected number one, 98-64, and they finished fourth. The Yankees lost 16 more games than projected. Toronto was predicted to finish second at 90 and 72, and they won 89 games and finished third. Tampa Bay was predicted to win 86, and they won 99, so they were plus 13. And then Boston predicted to win 80, and they won 79. So I think part of the projections for the reason that the Yankees are always at the top is that they have a lot of star power. And now they added Juan Soto, I believe, and that's why they get projected so high. And you see that these other guys outdid their projections so much because I think the Yankees get so much credit, and maybe they get more than they deserve. I'm not sure.
I think they do. Year after year, that lineup is got lots of star power, but it's so poorly constructed.
Well, I think, the interesting thing about what happened last year, and this may be one of those deals that you're saying, if looking at last year's, is, Baltimore started off the season really, really great. And I think that that's kind of the projections. I don't know if you go back to Baseball Perspectives and you scroll down past the projections, the numbers, and you look at the bell curve graphs that they have in there, they're kind of projecting Baltimore to do the same thing. Start off the season really great, and then kind of taper off a little bit. So I think they're expecting those young guys to maybe not have a full season of what they've had before. And then they show the Yankees kind of, catching fire a little bit more midway through the season, and really maintaining. And I think that may be the thing that puts the Yankees above, is that they might just have that staying power that a team full of young guys might not have. And Toronto kind of the same way. They've got a lot of just guys that have been there, kind of done that. They've got some good veteran talent in there that knows how to sustain a full season of decent baseball. And so that may be the make or break here when we look at those top three spots in the AL East.
I'm not sure if it
Yeah,
was last year. Sorry, Wally. I just want to. Was it last year that the Yankees started off really, really good, and then they made all these moves at the trade deadline, and then they went down? Like it seemed like they had a lot
I
of
think it
good
was
chemistry,
I
and they
think it was
ruined
year
it.
before.
It was 2022.
I think so. Because last year, correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't seem like they ever really caught fire. It seemed like they never got out of first gear.
Hmm.
Looking at, when you look at the Yankees lineup, the projected lineup, we talk about where do they land versus their projection. The lineup has holes. Right now, they're looking at LeMahieu playing third on a day-to-day basis. He's 35, and he's best as being a spot player moving around. You look at the starting pitch, and it looks good, but you've got with Cole on top, and then you've got Rodon and Stroman. Well, Rodon and Stroman have had injury issues. You know, if they don't make it, if they get hurt, what happens? It doesn't seem to have a whole ton of depth that they can call on if these guys get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt during the season. The Astros showed that last year that a depth in starting pitching, or what seemed to be a lockdown strength, turned out to be very questionable.
Yeah, the Astros started out well and faltered at the end with the starting pitching, or they be the World Series champs again. Let's take a look at the American League Central. They have Minnesota winning the division with 88.7 wins. Cleveland finishing second, 83.6. The Tigers in third with 75. Kansas City winning 70 games. And the Chicago White Sox, 65.9 games. For me, looking at this, it seems about right. It's going to be Minnesota or Cleveland in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City has been super busy in free agency, and I think that they grabbed some pieces that can really help them, but I don't think that they grabbed the kind of guys that really move the needle a ton. The Tigers added a couple of veteran additions, but I think that when you look at that, when you look at that division, Minnesota, eh, they've just got the better pieces. They just really do. They've got the standout pieces that make the difference in that division. As horrible as that division is, Minnesota's got the pieces that just make it stand out. No, there's nobody else there that can really do what Cleveland did 2 years ago and surprise the heck out of everybody. That was an anomaly, and I don't think it's going to happen again. So I think this is an easy one to pick with the Twins taking the Central.
Twins won last year with Correa doing virtually nothing. You got to expect Correa's going to respond. The Guardians, I'm not sure what you're going to get out of the Guardians. The Tigers and the Royals look like, especially the Royals, have bought serviceable veterans who are going to at least hold the fort while their young kids develop. And the White Sox just look to be an absolute mess.
It's crazy because they had such a good pitching staff, and Luis Robert and Tim Anderson. I mean, they had some really good players, but very underperforming pretty well. So let's take a look at 2023. They projected Minnesota to win at 88-74, but they actually projected them to tie with Cleveland. And the Sox 78-84, Detroit 65-97, and Kansas City 62-100. So Minnesota projected to win, and they did. Cleveland projected to tie for first. They got third. The White Sox third. They got fourth. And the surprise in that division, Detroit was projected to win 65 games, and they won 78 and finished second. And Kansas City 56-106. Not good there in Kansas City.
Yeah. That's brutal. Of course, the Astros 10 years ago, we know what brutal's all about.
We've been through brutal. So let's go ahead and talk about the Astros and the American League West. I guess y'all can explain it to me a little bit more because I don't really follow other teams. I'm really just focused on the Astros. But Houston is not projected to win the division with 94.8 wins. Texas, 86 wins, the defending champions. Seattle, 85 wins. LA Angels, 73 wins. Poor Mike Trout. And Oakland, 63 wins. How pathetic is that to have one of the best players in the league and he's just stuck on a team that's just horrible?
Oh, no, he's like our generation's version of Ernie Banks. Great player on team that just stinks every year. Everybody is selling the Rangers short, and I really don't know why.
I don't either.
The only thing that I can look at is the pitching. Is the pitching, because you've got DeGrom and Scherzer are out, and it looks like their starting rotation is going to be Eovaldi, Gray, Heaney, Dunning, and Bradford. So that doesn't scare anybody. And if Gray gets hurt, as Gray can get hurt,
they also don't have Montgomery, right?
No, Montgomery's still out.
They had Jordan Montgomery last.
They could still bring him back theoretically, but
yeah, he's still there.
They just recently signed on to their RSP, their RSN, excuse me, and so they have a better idea of what their income's going to be with the regional sports network being done. Bringing back Jordan just makes a lot of sense to them. I mean, you talking about a team that needs that arm. They need that arm. DeGrom is going to come back August. Scherzer is July. Even when a guy comes back from Tommy John, it takes a while for that performance to pick up. So whatever they get from those guys is going to be found money.
Yeah, I mean, you've got an offense that's rated, probably top 5, right? A top 5 rated offense. But I'm pretty sure that I saw their pitching rated in the bottom 10. So I think that when it comes to these projections, that's what they're really looking at, is, do Scherzer and DeGrom come back? Does Tyler Mahle contribute at all to any wins if they need him, right? Then they've got just their bullpen is just kind of patched together. You know, David Robertson, pretty good, right? That was a decent pickup. I think they overpaid a little bit for him. His $11 or $12 million a year contract made Josh Hader's contract look pretty good to me. But Hernandez, Anderson, you know, Latz, Yates, Brock Burke, none of those names. Yeah, Spores, Leclerc, you know, none of those guys really strike a lot of fear into the rest of the league. When you're looking at 60, 65 innings pitched between the majority of some of those guys, do they have the staying power? Because a lot of those guys last year really didn't. And the end of the season, they proved why their bullpen was the issue for them. And the ALCS proved why Bochy only had faith in a couple of guys, that he ran out there every single, you know, at the end of every single game. They had starters that, for whatever reason, again, the Astros weren't hitting at home. Their starters went deep into the game. He didn't have to play in the middle of his bullpen. You can't do that during the course of a season, 162 games. So I think that's going to be their Achilles heel. You know, since 2010, 7 of the 13 teams that won the World Series didn't make the playoffs. And so, you know, both PECOTA and Fangraphs have the Rangers even as a borderline playoff team next year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Rangers.
So the playoff schedule really worked into their favor, because with the starters doing well, they didn't have to get into that bullpen at all.
Yeah. So you speak of the playoffs. This is, according to PECOTA only. I know there's other people that have projections and stuff, but Houston would be the 1 seed by 0.6 of a point. Yankees number 2, Minnesota 3. That's your division winners, and it has Toronto, Baltimore, and Tampa Bay. It's almost the entire AL East making it, and it also has percentage points. It has Houston 91%, the Yankees 89%, Minnesota 76%, Toronto 64%, Baltimore 55%, Tampa Bay 53%. But it gives the Rangers a 52.8% chance of just making the playoffs. And another team that I think can challenge the Astros is the Mariners, 46.6% chance. But the Astros, 91% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, don't sleep on the Mariners.
Of course not. We won't, because we play them all the time in the division. We know how good they are. The teams that are on the low side, Oakland has a 0.1% chance. Chicago White Sox 0.10 chance. Kansas City 1.2% chance. And the Angels and Mike Trout, this is what I said earlier, a 3.3% chance of making the playoffs. That's pathetic.
What's sad about a guy like Trout is that this team doesn't have a chance of making the playoffs, and Trout is getting to the age where people really aren't going to give anything for him, especially with that contract.
And it just amazes me with the money that Art Moreno has there in LA. You know, I know he plays second fiddle to the Dodgers, whatever. There's still plenty of money there in LA, and with his deal that he's got, that he could field a team, but he just continues to not care, and just not either invest in the right people in the front office that know what they're doing. Because you can't say that he hasn't spent money. He's, you know, they're always in the top 20 of the league with money. It just baffles me. It's just so weird to see that the second team in LA is so bad every single year. And you've got quality names on a team like that. And at the top of that list of names being, you know, Mike Trout, you had Ohtani, and you couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't even sniff the playoffs. It's wild.
That's why Ohtani left.
Yep.
So looking at the projections in the American League West, this is almost the last thing I have before we go to the National League. I have the 2022 and 2023. Like in 2022, the Astros won the World Series. They were projected to win 91, and they won 106. They won 15 more games. And then last season, the Rangers were projected to go 78 and 84. And they went 90 and 72. So they won 12 more games than they were projected. I guess they did okay last year. The LA Angels were projected to finish second. Seattle's projected to finish third, and Texas fourth. So LA
Rangers surprised
Angels,
everybody.
yeah,
The
the
Rangers
Angels
surprised everybody.
underperformed big time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is was last year a flash in the pan, and that's going to be the big question this year for those guys.
Yep. The Astros have the staying power. I made the TikTok video and I've brought it up on here already. It's, I said, okay, the Nationals beat us. Where are they at? Have they won another one? We got
Yep.
knocked out by the Rays. Have they won a World Series? We got knocked out by the Red Sox. Where are they at? So it's like every team that's beaten us, where are they at now? We're still here.
Yep.
Is that going to be the Rangers? Are they going to be one and done like everybody else? Are they going to stick around and compete for World Series again and again and again like us? That's the question.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the setup with the core of the Astros has been huge. But pitching has by far been the thing that's driven the Astros' success over those years. And it's really hard to keep quality pitching together and continue to get, 150 innings out of a guy that's going to pitch a 3.2 ERA. And the Astros have a barn full of those kind of guys for some reason. And when you have that kind of a setup with your pitching staff and you have a core of players like Bregman, Altuve, Tucker, and Jordan, it's insanely hard to not be successful aside from, dealing with certain injuries, which I think last year being kind of the anomaly for the Astros was we had significant injuries from significant guys at the same time. And it caused, it cost them probably, 8 or 10 games. I feel last year's the composition of last year's team was another 100-win season team with those injuries to Jordan and Altuve through the core middle of the season there. That cost you 8 or 10 or more games. And I think that was the backbreaker as far as season record. Obviously, it didn't matter that much when it came to the playoffs. They still performed well, even though they didn't make the World Series run. But, looking at the projections here and seeing what they're looking at, pitching is again the strength of this team in its staying power. They're projecting 197 innings from Fromber, 153 from Verlander, and 152 from Javier. Hunter Brown, whether he's a starter or from the bullpen, they're estimating 140 innings from him, So there's some of those questions that we continue to bring up and we say, what's the Astros going to do? But when you start digging into those numbers and you start looking at those names and the projections being based somewhat on historical numbers and what these guys have done in the past, it's hard not to have a level of confidence that this team does more than the 95 games that they're projected.
One thing that the Astros have done so well is when you look at how a team is developed, the most inconsistent, the hardest thing to put together is a strong bullpen every year. Bullpens pitching is notoriously volatile. Bullpens are even more volatile than the starters. And the Astros have a good bullpen every year. When you look at the guys they let go, Maton go, they let Neris go, and they let Stanek go. They gave very little thought about really signing Maton. I think they would have signed Neris, but Neris was 35. Stanek is still surprisingly without a job.
Yeah.
They did bring guys in. By adding Hader, they essentially moved everybody back an inning.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's nothing to think that they won't be good again this year.
Yeah, we'll get into the pitching for the Astros a little later. But let's look at the National League. They have the Atlanta Braves winning the East with Philadelphia in second, the Mets in third, Miami, and then Washington, who beat the Astros. National League Central, this is a toss-up every year. St. Louis, 84, Cubs, 80, Milwaukee, 79, Cincinnati, 77, which Cincinnati could win this division, and then Pittsburgh, 72. And in the West, the Dodgers, 101.9, so they give them the best record. Arizona, 85, so they got the Dodgers running away with that. San Francisco, 81, San Diego, 79. I remember San Diego, they got grabbed all of these players, and now they just a 79 projected winning team, and then Colorado, the Oakland A's of the National League, 57. So, what are y'all's thoughts on any of these National League projections?
I think the
Well,
Central is the most interesting one, right? With Seattle going from worst to first, basically in those projections, But it's easy to see. I mean, it's easy to see why, right? I mean, they added Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson. They picked up a bullpen arm that I don't remember what his name is. They're still a fairly decent young team now that they've kind of spent some time at the bottom. So they're spending a little bit of money to bring in some arms. So I think it'll be interesting to see what really happens with this. I can see why those projections are what they are, but you still have to put those pieces together. It's just kind of like San Diego a couple of years ago. Everybody, and even last year, everybody expected them to be at the top of the heap. They're fighting, neck to neck with the Dodgers. And they had all this money spent and all these big names on that team. They just couldn't put the pieces together on the field and make it work. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, Central's always a toss-up. Any of those top 4 teams outside of Pittsburgh could make a run at winning that division for sure.
The Braves are the best until proven otherwise. The Phillies will give them a run. I just don't think they've got enough horses. Dombrowski's still liable to make a move. I could see him making a move for Montgomery. We'll see what happens with the Mets. They can't be as bad as they were last year. The Central is kind of a pickup sticks. You put a blindfold on, stick your hand into a jar and pull a name out, and that team could win as well as any of the other ones. The Dodgers should win. The Diamondbacks are going to be better than they were last year on the record, even though they only won 84 games. We talked about it one of the other shows, but the thing that comes back to me on the Dodgers that could really cause them issues is when you look at their pitching staff, it looks like it should be okay, but you've got 2 guys, Glasnow and Paxton, who are still injury prone. Yamamoto looks like he's got it, but he's a Jap. They say he's the most prepared Japanese player to come over to the U.S., but you don't know until he gets over here. And is he going to be able to pitch on a 5-man rotation rather than once a week? Then you've got Bobby Miller, who was fine last year, and Sheehan, who were fine, but they're young pitchers. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you might be lucky to get 50 innings out of Kershaw if he ends up coming back when they think he's going to come back, right? So that's where the question marks are. And it's funny that I still think it's funny that they've got him at 101 wins with how many question marks they really have.
They're going to win it all on
offense.
And
if that pitching staff goes south, you could get the offense starting to press. It could, you just never know.
Yeah. So there's a couple of guys just that I wrote down. Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell. They sign with any one of these teams, it's going to add wins to their total. This is all going to change when people sign. This isn't set in stone, folks. It is just it can still move. There's still people out there. But let's move on to this topic here. So Espada, he said he wanted, and we've already talked about this, but we didn't really get into it. He wanted Jordan to play more left field. And I'm all for that because he's a good left fielder for one, and also he hits better. He hits better when he's playing left field minus that. But one thing interesting that and this shows you how much respect Espada has for this young player. He said Yainer Diaz, he would like to keep him in the lineup when getting a day off from catching. So when Caratini comes in, he still wants Yainer Diaz in that lineup, and that'll put Jordan in left field. So the question is this, folks. This is a question I have for both of you and whoever's listening. If Jake Myers is supposed to be the full-time starting center fielder, what does this do for Chaz? Like, how are they going to have an all-time starting center fielder if Jordan's going to be in left field at least half the time or something like that?
Beer league softball, 4 outfielders.
Chaz in left center and Jake running right center.
Rover.
Yeah, I think so.
The Rover.
Chaz is going to play. Chaz is going to play. These things we talk about these issues. Where are we going to find a place to play? Invariably, it works itself out.
Yeah.
One of these guys gets in and starts hitting. Myers, they're going to say Myers is going to get all the run in center field. And I think he's going to get, 2 months to figure it out. I think he's going to get 200, 250 at bats to figure it out. If he hasn't figured it out, then, Jake's time here might be short. You know what you have with Chaz. And the concern is if you try to get too cute and give somebody a chance more so than they should, you could play yourself into a hole you're trying to get out of for the rest of the season. But Spada's been around this team enough. He'll see it. He'll see the right decision to be made, and he'll put the right guys in the spot. Jordan will play. I think at the end of the day, you're going to see Chaz and Myers each start about 120 games.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I felt as though this was a little bit of a backpedal from the whole Jake Myers is our center fielder comment that came, 6 weeks ago or however long ago that was. Primarily because if you're playing Jordan a lot in left field, thinking that Chaz is going to sit the bench or DH, it just doesn't make sense. And it's not something that I think Joe Espada is going to be all about. So I feel as though maybe this is, without saying it out loud, a little bit of a backpedal on Jake Myers is our primary center fielder comment, right? So I think what you'll end up seeing is potentially what a lot of us really wanted to see last year was a little bit more of the matchups and who is going to play center field, who's going to play left, and what are those three guys going to rotate in based on the matchups. When Jordan is DHing, you're going to see Chaz and Jake out in the field. But when Jordan is playing the field, that's when I think your center fielder is going to be primarily based on that right-hand pitcher, left-hand pitcher starter. And so I do feel as though this was a little bit of a backpedal on the part of Espada saying that Jake's our guy. And, kind of putting Chaz back in center field. He's going to get center field playing time. I think it's going to end up happening when you say that Jordan's going to play a lot more in left field than what you might have thought about previously.
Well, what I've heard about Espada, from Espada so far is that he wants people to have a set place. He wants a center fielder. He wants, he wants everybody to have a position. He doesn't want to do this rotating in and out. And so I don't know. It's going to be, I think if he's going to have Jake Myers in there and have Chaz McCormick on the bench, that is definitely a nice formula for him to follow to get his first slander on social media. Because if Jake is starting like last year, there's no reason that Dusty should have had Chaz on the bench the first 2 games of the year based on what he did in the playoffs for us. So sitting Chaz McCormick, Mr. Espada, that's a formula for getting slandered.
Well, I think, there's a lot of us that really paid attention to WRC plus moving averages last year. And if you really pay attention to the 15-game moving averages of Jake Myers and Chaz McCormick, Jake Myers is a guy that performs very well with regular playing time and does not have the roller coaster ride of a moving average graph that Chaz McCormick does. And so this may be a little bit of smarts on Joe Espada's part, knowing that that Chaz McCormick needs time off in order to be at his best, because when he moves past that 15 days, every single time he's got a drop off, and it's not just a little bit of a drop off. It's a pretty steep drop off. And Jake Myers, when he gets playing time over that 15 days, he lacks the drop off that Chaz has. So this may be some of that analytics coming back into the formula, into the decision making from the dugout that we haven't seen over the last few years. And I'm a fan of it. I'm all about it. But in the end, it's got to be, who's the guy that's out there really performing and putting up the numbers. And so we know that Chaz can. I think that those of us who are still believers in Jake Myers look at those sections of time in which he was able to perform, and it was the time that he had regular playing time. It was when Chaz was out. He was a top 10 hitter in the league when Chaz was out with his back issues. As soon as he went back to platooning with Chaz, he fell off the face of the earth again. So it'll be interesting to see how Espada really tries to handle that if it is based on those numbers, and if he's actually doing this and saying these things based on some of the analytics that he's looked at.
Jake Myers was a stud before he ran into the wall and hurt himself. I'm not
sure. Myers must have had a really bad shoulder injury, and they'll only tell us that it was that there was a surgery and he was out. And last year you could tell by the way he was throwing that it was not back. So they must think it's back.
All right, moving along, folks. So Dana Brown said the Astros are still hoping to add to the pitching staff, and probably a starter is what he was saying. And one of the other guys that is projected to start, they can move to the bullpen, and that takes care of one of the bullpen arms that we need. So the Astros, their payroll is now $255 million. This is just what I got from the story from McTaggart. $255 million. The first tax threshold was $237. The next level is $257. So if they sign anyone for over $2 million, they're going to be in that second level. So anyone saying that, so he knows he's $2 million away, and Jim Crane's going to be okay with giving him another pitcher, then there's no reason to ever say that Jim Crane's not going to spend cash to make this team a winner.
Yeah, when you look at who's out there right now, you've got Snell, Montgomery, maybe Hyunjin Ryu, and maybe Clevenger.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the people that go after Snell are going to probably be very disappointed. Snell has, in his seasons in the big leagues, he's got 2 good seasons. He had 1 year when he won 21 games, he had a 1.89 ERA. Last year he won 14. He had a 2.25 ERA. And all the rest of the seasons, not counting the COVID season, it was 6 with a 3.54, 5 with a 4.04, 6 with a 4.29, 7 with a 4.20, 8 with a 3.38. He walks a lot of people. He doesn't go deep into games, and he's probably going to want $25 million a year. Montgomery has always been a solid 500 pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
He made himself a lot of money in the playoffs last year. In the years that he does go halfway deep into games. He'll go average between 5 1/4 and 6 innings a game. Pretty consistent. Ryu came back from a Tommy John. He didn't go deep in games, but it takes guys a year to get back from Tommy John. I guess where I come down to is that it's nice to see Brown saying he's going to add a pitcher. I'm not sure where it's going to come from. Clevenger's not anything.
There's another guy on the list. There's another guy on the list story called Lorenzen.
Yeah, he had that no-hitter for the Phillies last year, but after that he fell completely off the map. If he's adding a pitcher, that to me says there's a trade.
That's what it says on there.
That's the question. That's going to be the question, right?
Considerations and trades.
Yeah, who's he
it's
going?
It's got to be a trade because
with it.
I don't. Crane will make the right deal, but I don't see the right deal out there. Just adding a free agent with big money, especially when you look about 31, 32-year-old guys, pitchers who want a 5 or 6 year deals. And when pitchers start to slide, man, they tend to slide fast.
Yeah. Hey, is that Greinke still available?
That would be awesome.
Yeah, he'd be good for stories, wouldn't he?
That would be awesome. Put him in the bullpen.
That would be a good PR move.
I would love it.
Can you
Yeah, I
imagine if
think
they
I
hired?
agree with
Can you imagine
Wally
if they
in
hired
large.
Grinke onto the broadcast staff just to tell the weird stories?
That'd be awesome. I'm all
Yeah,
100%. Give me all the
that would
Grinky
be
you can give me.
hilarious. That would be hilarious. Yeah,
Some
I think I agree with Wally. You go out there and you look at the free agents, starting pitchers, free agent starting pitchers that are available. You're not going to pull anyone for less than probably 8 or 9 million a year. And so, and when you get to that 8 or 9 million a year, that's who you're looking at. Is you're looking at Johnny Cueto, you're looking at Rich Hill, you're looking at Michael Lorenzen, you're looking at Corey Kluber. No, sorry, he just
Kluber
retired,
He
right?
retired
did,
today.
yeah,
Yeah, he just
I saw
retired.
that. Yep.
Or Ryu. Those are your kind of low level guys that you're going to get for 8 or 9, maybe $10 million. Anything other than that, you're looking at Montgomery, Clevenger, Urias, Blake Snell. So saying that you're going to go after a starting pitcher, knowing that CBT threshold is sitting right there, $2 million away,
Yeah.
you're going to have to dump salary in a trade and make a deal for somebody that's not out there on the free agent market. So it's an interesting comment to make because the only guys that you have really to trade that would be a salary dump is not a long list of guys that you would really want this team to trade away.
Yep.
So it's an interesting comment to make, aside from the fact that Uncle Jimmy said, hey, you know what? If we go over, we go over, but you better win the dang ring, Dana. You better win the dang ring.
There's one
Well,
good
and even
pitcher that they could use, and I think he's only going to cost like 700 and something thousand. Spencer Arrighetti.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else.
No, I'm just.
well, and
I
even
thought you
even
were going to
Urias.
throw out. I thought you were going to throw out Trevor Bauer's name.
Oh no.
Now,
What would y'all
Urias
say about that?
Urias isn't available to get to Bauer in a second. Is Urias is not available because he's in legal trouble.
Oh,
Is he too? Okay.
Yeah, he got caught hitting people.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep.
And he got, and in fact, he just got caught again getting in a fight.
Yeah.
The thing about
not just hitting people,
Bauer,
but hitting his wife, right?
Bauer's a PR nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need a lot of people to line up and say this is the right thing to do, and Bauer would have to be saying all the right things, and he'd have to be really putting himself out there and saying, not just saying the right things, but saying the right things at the right people, to the right people in the right forums. I mean, it wouldn't take but one screw up and it would be awful.
Yeah. He said
And
he would play for any team for the league minimum. So do you guys
seems like he's
think
ready to
anybody would take him?
He's ready to eat crow.
Who would take him?
And he's ready to do just about anything to play in the major leagues again. I don't know, man. I just
the Astros, no way the Astros could do it.
No, I don't see that. I would see someone like,
I was thinking like a team like Kansas City, Chicago White Sox, or anything.
some
but it's
bottom
not going to
fisher
do
who just
anything
needs
for them.
But you know what he
negative
does?
publicity.
You know what he does if he comes in to a bottom feeder,
yeah,
and he does well, and he behaves well, he has an opportunity to rehabilitate himself a little bit.
That.
There's always going to be people who don't touch him, and you can't blame them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's probably why he's coming out saying what he's saying is, hey, I'll play for the league minimum, right? Like anybody, give me a shot. Kansas City, I'll come play. Pittsburgh, I'll come play, because I think that if he feels that if he can get in, just put it, just as long as he can get in, put his toe back into the league, he can prove himself. Now, whether or not that comes to fruition would be a whole nother story. Personally, I don't have that big of an issue. If my team signed Trevor Bauer, I'd be okay with it. Don't have to get into all the details, but I have friends who had false allegations against him, and I know exactly what that does to a man's life. He's got other issues that he works with and his attitude and, all of those other pieces. But, I wouldn't have that big of a deal about, I wouldn't think that big of a deal about it. We signed Ozuna, There was a lot of people who thought that was going to cause a huge backlash. It lasted for about 3 weeks, and then
Yeah.
everybody was all about Osuna being our closer and we're supporting him.
The only time it came
Trevor
back
Bauer's a
was
little bit
when
more
that
of a bigger name, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, the only time it came back with Osuna was when that Taubman guy was in the locker room yelling
Yep.
at the woman that was always posting the hotline for abused women. But other than that, he was a good player. He was
He
a
came
good
in and did his job.
citizen, and he did his job. He wasn't an a-hole. I mean, I don't know, because I don't really know the entire story of Trevor Bauer, but I know he didn't get convicted of what he did. I
He was
mean,
never charged.
he was
They
never
wouldn't even
charged,
they would not even
so
take the charges.
that's
And then
pretty
all the
tough.
text messages and the videos came out, and she fabricated the whole thing. The one girl. Now, of course, supposedly
Yeah.
there's a couple of others out there, but nobody will file charges against him. And at least the main story that was going on about him has completely come out that it was all fabricated. So, but people don't want to hear that, right? I understand it. I guess I have a soft spot for guys that are falsely accused of those
Yeah.
types of things, because I know some people close to me that have gone through that, and it ruins their lives. So
Oh, yeah.
personally, I'd be willing to be one that would be on the side of giving him a chance, but with an extremely short leash.
Well, one place he won't go is New York, because he and Garrett Cole hate each other.
All right, next up on the docket, Kent Emanuel, former, hope I spelled his name right. That looks right. Former Astro signed a minor league contract with the Marlins, and Kent Emanuel went to North Carolina in college. Really good player, really good in the minor leagues. Got called up to the Astros. Who was pitching?
Odorizzi.
We already
Odorizzi. I
me
was
and
at
Wally
that
already
game.
talked about this. So Odorizzi was pitching, and we had Ken Emanuel on the podcast here. I guess the next off season, and he was saying, he just gather all of his stuff. You see it when you go to the games, all the bullpen guys walking to the bullpen. He said, "I'm just settling in, putting things down. Hadn't even taken a sip of my coffee, and they're like, 'You're in,' because Odorizzi got hurt." So he said he chugged it, and he went in, and I guess, and then he said it was so weird. It was just the weirdest thing in the world to warm up in front of everybody, because he didn't have the chance to warm up in the bullpen or anything. And the guy goes 8 2/3 innings. He finishes the game. It was like one of the most amazing things. And I don't know what happened with him that the Astros didn't keep him around, but at least
Had
he had a
arm
big.
trouble, didn't he?
Is that what happened?
I think he had arm trouble because he got hurt doing something.
I know they DFA'd him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had UCL surgery, left elbow. So he had Tommy John in 2021. And so the Phillies claimed him off of waivers, and then the Pirates signed him to a minor league deal last year. And
That was
so
like 3 or 4
now
years ago when this happened.
his Tommy John was
No,
21.
when he went and pitched the game for the Astros.
That was 21. So that was actually in April of 21. And then in June is whenever he had his Tommy John.
Wow, time flies when you're old. It seems like it was like 2
It
seasons
does.
ago.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Yeah,
Well,
It
it's
doesn't.
just,
really doesn't.
it's about three seasons ago.
Hmm.
But, one thing that comes up about these guys, we talk about, he's a perfect example of these guys when we think they make all this money. And a guy like, in today's number, he makes 715,000, which is, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But when you get guys who are young, and if they only go 2 or 3 years, they, for what they net, they can't retire on that. You really don't get into a point where you can support yourself with the baseball earnings until you get at least a couple of years into arbitration. And still,
Yeah.
you have to make good investments. Can't
Yep.
spend it on stupid stuff. It's fleeting. And if these guys don't have a long career, many of these guys are out on the street at 26 years old without a college education, trying to make a living. And you can say go back to school, which Major League Baseball will pay for. But then you're out of school at 30 years old competing with people who are 22.
Yeah. Well, I wish him luck. I know that.
Yeah, me too.
If he gets on the squad, he'll be there with Yuli. I guess Yuli's still in Miami. I haven't heard anything about that. I
think he's a free agent. I don't think they kept him.
Is he really?
Yeah, he only had he only had a
you see how little I know about deal. You see how little I know about other teams?
Yeah, he had a 1-year deal, and when we were complaining about Abreu, Yuli's numbers were worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not at the beginning of the year.
He signed a non-roster minor league deal going into the season, and then they signed him to like a $1.2 million contract after week 3 of the season or something like that.
Uh-oh. Someone can't spell. I got a little Steffi going here.
I thought you were just trying to save us from
super bow.
Copyright
Take a super bow, folks. You did a great show. Take a super bow. No, but anyway, I got the.
That sounds like one of those bad commercials you get right about dinner time.
I'm pretty excited about the commercials. They're not as good as they used to be, but I'm pretty excited. But you remember when I was telling you about the conspiracy theory video? I don't know why it says conspiracy theory. It's not really a conspiracy, but about the number 13. What I cannot prove is that Taylor Swift had an album called 13. I can't prove that because I looked it up and I don't see it. But here's what the video says, and it's pretty interesting. Super Bowl 58 is tomorrow. 5 + 8, 13. The game is on February 11th. That's 2/11. 2 + 11, 13. 49ers, 4 + 9, 13. 49ers are the 1 seed. Kansas City are a 3 seed. 13. Taylor Swift's in concert right now. She's in Tokyo. If she goes to the game, it's a 13-hour flight. And this will be her 13th game of the season. So pretty crazy.
And Brock Purdy's number 13.
I don't know how this has anything to do with them winning, but it's just pretty interesting. There was another one that said
that's funny.
100 minus 13 is 87, and that's Travis Kelce's jersey. But this doesn't that's why I don't know why it says conspiracy. It's like the Chiefs it doesn't say the Chiefs are going to win because of this, but I find it cool that the number 13 is just intertwined in the Super Bowl big time.
All around. Interesting.
Here's something I heard the other day that'll just blow you away.
All right.
Do you know how many Alabama players have scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl?
0. I have to say either a super high number or 0 because I'm supposed to be
0, and it will not happen this year. There are no Alabama players in the Super Bowl.
And you think Alabama's going to decline after losing their coach? He's gone, right?
No.
Didn't he retire?
How can you not decline from where they are?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're at the top, you only have one way to go, and that's down.
That's right. Who wins the Super Bowl? Who y'all got?
I think the Chiefs are going to win. They're not favored.
I think it'll be the Chiefs. I don't have a dog in the fight, so honestly, don't care which one wins. Yeah. But I think the Chiefs pull it off.
I just hope the burgers are good because I don't have a dog in the fight either. And it's something about Kansas City. They just know how to win.
Yep.
The thing about it is when Kansas City played Baltimore, because I was like, the Ravens are going to go all the way. The Ravens they're awesome this year. And the way Kansas City played, the way they executed everything, it's like, wow, this is the team right here. So I'm all 100%. I don't have a dog in the fight either because I like the Texans. But, I think Kansas City is going to win it. I don't know by how many, but I picked Kansas City. I think we already all picked this, but I don't really care if it's I hope it's a good game. I don't care who wins. but I'm looking forward to the commercials just as much as the game.
I'm about the food. It's just one of those days of the year where you have a really good excuse to just lay out all the food that you
do,
don't
right?
normally eat the rest of the year, or very
Yeah.
rare occasions. So for us, even if or when we have a dog in the fight or whatever here in our house, I got a house full of teenagers, so it's all snack foods all day.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun. That's what we do on Super Bowl Sunday every year. It's a tradition, again, whether or not we have a team that we're rooting for. So it's fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll have friends over and we'll do burgers, and we'll do, boneless chicken, skinless chicken breasts, and make sandwiches out of that. Drink an adult beverage or
Oh
few.
yeah. I'm gonna have to get
And
started early because I work in the morning. I gotta
Yeah.
get up at 4:30 in the morning, so I gotta start winding down about 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think someone's bringing over chicken and chicken wings and pizza, and my wife's making ribs. So
Nice.
that's what we're having.
Love
be
it.
good.
Ryan, if you're doing any chicken wings, y'all doing chicken wings tomorrow?
We might. Yeah, I haven't made the menu
Put
yet.
some of
but
that. Put some Tio Ernesto's Fuego on it.
Hey, let me tell you what I did with that stuff, Wally. This here's the Tia Ernesto's plug for the day.
For everybody is in Tio Ernesto's is a Cuban seasoning that I manufacture and sell through a few retail outlets here in Houston. You can get it online.
So let me tell you, and this was my 16-year-old daughter was the one that figured it out. I don't know what made her grab it and use it, but she used it to make her guacamole the other day. And
She used the Fuego?
said no, she used the regular one. But I used the Fuego, and it was
the Fuego's awesome in guacamole.
ridiculous. It was awesome. So add that to your list of how to use this product, because a little bit of salt, squeeze a lime, and the Tio Ernesto's, whether it's the Fuego or not, will mix you up a really good guacamole.
Yeah. What we do is the Fuegos, we'll take the Fuego and use it for demos at Bearings. Yeah, for the guacamole, it's kind of a 1-to-1 swap out of the cilantro for the Fuego.
Well, all right.
It's pretty good.
Tio Ernesto.
Thanks for the plug.
There you are.
Commercials. I'll tell you how much that commercial cost later. But anyway,
I'll kick it back to you.
No. All right. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We have went over an hour. We're having so much fun together talking, and we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk half as much as we enjoyed doing the talking. So thanks for tuning in for Wally and Ryan, and we will see you next time on Astros Baseball.